So, someone sent me a link to this article, and the headline was rather surprising, but when I thought about it, it really wasn't. The headline was called The Forever Layoff, and it talked about how we are now in a period where there is no start and end date to a layoff. Now, when I first started my career, early 90s with Honeywell, we were doing layoffs then, but they were typically done in October. And that is why we called it Black October, because we knew as employees that changes were going to be made in the organization and that positions were going to be eliminated. But we knew that after October, that if you weren't impacted, you were good to go for the rest of the year until October rolled around again. And in my other organizations that I worked in, we would have these layoff programs and we would call them different things: Operation Spirit, Operation Banana, what have you. Give them these little names because it was a defined program with a start and an end date. But today, that is no longer the case. Layoffs have become a normal course of business. They are perpetual, they are ongoing. And unfortunately, it has real impact on us as employees. We feel anxious. There's the constant uncertainty, the constant feeling of, am I next? The exhaustion of doing the work of two or three people, the silence in your team meetings and leadership meetings when your managers are asking, are there any questions? And people are afraid to speak up. And the dreaded calendar invite that you get unexpectedly at the last minute that sends your heart racing. So this isn't burnout, and you're not being oversensitive, and it isn't personal failure, but it is actually the forever layoff. And millions of workers are living in it every day. So let's talk about it. Welcome to Exit to Excel. My name is Latanya. They call me LT, and I am a career strategist and AI consultant. And I've built this podcast and this platform to pull the curtain behind what's going on in these companies around your careers and your jobs and layoffs and the impact of AI. So if you've been following me, then thank you so much. We're now up to 130 subscribers. So if you are not yet subscribing, hit that subscribe button because we have some great stuff happening in 2026. You'll notice a new look on our thumbnails. We'll be adding guests to the podcast starting in 2026 as well as some other exciting webinars and trainings that I'll be offering. So you don't want to miss a thing. So hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share this with someone who may be able to use this information. It's interesting because I did an episode, a couple of weeks ago about layoffs that happened right before the holidays. And one of my former coworkers, she sent me a text with a screenshot of the episode and said, LT, this could not have come at a better time. I just got let go of from my job. So I am so delighted to hear stuff like that because I know this is information that people can use, especially right now. So again, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that share button, and also follow me on my social media. You can follow me on LinkedIn under Latanya Shaw, and you can also follow me on TikTok and Instagram under Exit to Excel. And I thank you in advance. But let's go ahead and talk about this forever layoff and see what's going on. So I want to break down one of the most important conversations happening in workplaces right now Even though you're never going to hear from HR and you're never going to hear your leaders talk about it either. We are living in an era where the layoffs never fully end. It hangs in the air, it follows people home, and it shapes decisions, behavior, confidence, and identity. Now, we're not going to talk about how to deal with this. We're not going to talk about strategy. We'll talk about that in the next episode. But for this episode, I just want to name a thing to let you know that you're not going crazy so that you can stop blaming yourself for a system that keeps shifting under your feet. So, what is the forever layoff? The forever layoff isn't a single moment where a company cuts jobs. It is now a culture. It's a culture where layoffs become quiet, they're constant, they're unpredictable, they're emotionally draining, and they are woven into our everyday experience of work. So, this is what it feels like. Let's break it on down. This is what it feels like. It feels like when you go into the office or when you log on, you're asking yourself, is today going to be the day? Why are they reorganizing again? What does this new structure mean for me? Why am I suddenly taking on extra work? And why did this person all of a sudden just fall off the meeting invites and the organizational chart? It's when job security becomes a memory and not a benefit. But here's the most important thing that most people don't realize. The forever layoff isn't happening because workers and employees failed. It is happening because the workplace has changed and no one has prepared us for that hard reality. Now, I've been doing this a long time in HR, sitting in rooms with leaders, talking about restructuring, trying to figure out who's going to go, who's going to stay, who's going to take on more work, shifting around entire teams like puzzle pieces without really being able to understand the emotional cost. Now, for me, having been through it, I completely understand it. And although a lot of leaders have never gone through it themselves and they can never really understand the emotional toll, trust me when I tell you, some of these leaders agonize over these decisions. They agonize over having to have these conversations because they truly love their teams, they are dedicated to their teams, and they do not take these decisions lightly. So even though you may be on the receiving end of a conversation and they're very stoic, they're very professional, they're rather cold, it is because they are having to detach their emotions from the actions. And while they may be good at demonstrating that, trust me when I tell you inside they're agonizing. I know it because I've had many conversations with them. So know that it isn't personal. Because at the end of the day, we are having to make decisions to even let go of the most talented, dedicated employees. And it has an impact on them too. I've seen very high performing, dedicated, talented employees who are overworked because they are overworked and undercommunicated to, and they're constantly worried. And because of that, their performance sometimes suffer. I've seen people work evenings and weekends. I've seen them miss events for their kids because they do not want to be seen as being expendable. Um, have you, like most people, if you are on Teams or some kind of system where you're green if you're active online, you're even afraid to take a 30-minute lunch, to be away from your computer for 30 minutes because you don't want people asking and wondering where you are and what you're doing. Because then that leads to, well, then if they can afford to take a 30-minute lunch, then maybe we don't need that role. It's bad. It is that bad where people do not even feel comfortable stepping away from their desk. Forget a 30-minute lunch, but even a 15-minute break. And I remember my last year or two in my last company, because we were having so many layoffs, so many people from the HR organization that were being separated, that when we had these meetings, right, town hall meetings or whatever, we were given permission. We were given permission to go out and take a walk, to step away for 15 minutes. Imagine that you are being given permission. Now, at the end of the day, they weren't giving it like real permission, but they knew that people were overworked, they were overstressed, and they were afraid to step away from their desk. So that was their way of letting us know that it was okay. That's the environment that we're living in, that we're working in. And I've seen really brilliant people lose sleep, lose joy, and they lose confidence, not because they were underperforming, but because of this constant churn of layoffs and because the rules kept changing and no one was telling them. And the HR organization isn't immune either. We are also impacted because we're overhead. And so, in addition to having being subjected to these same actions as the people we're supporting, we are struggling because we have to support this instability and this constant churn. And our role is to help soften the blow, okay, and help the leaders through it. So it's not always easy. So if you feel like you have been living in survival mode for the past 4 or 5 years, you're not imagining it. And you're not weak, you're not overreacting, and you're not failing. What you are doing is trying to live and navigate in a system around constant cost cutting, constant efficiencies, and constant change. And it's wearing. So, what you are feeling is absolutely normal. So, let's name a thing, because once you name a thing, you can stop internalizing it. So, the forever layoff feels like always being on alert, waiting for that email, feeling guilty about taking PTO, feeling guilty about being sick and not being able to work, keeping your resume updated quietly, watching coworkers disappear in the thin air without warning, taking on more work with no extra pay, living with a knot in your stomach every day, feeling disposable, feeling unseen, and feeling afraid to speak up or rock the boat. Is really a form of emotional labor that no one has trained us for. It's corporate hypervigilance. And bottom line, it's exhausting. Now, let me tell you the truth, what's really going on in the HR world. Companies are restructuring more often. Instead of budgets being set annually, they're now being changed quarterly. AI is shifting job responsibilities. Some roles shrink, others disappear quietly. Hiring freezes and layoffs, what used to be 1 or 2 time events during the year, are now becoming a constant cycle. I remember in my last company, we had a hiring freeze. that I think was supposed to last for maybe like a month or two, but then it went on the whole year. And finally, we quit asking, well, when is the hiring freeze going to be let up? Because it became obvious that it wasn't. It became a normal course of business where now we added in this process where hires would go through all this scrutiny. And instead of getting rid of the process, we just refined it so it wasn't as cumbersome and didn't, create a bottleneck, but it became a normal course of business. Now, the other thing that's happening is that workers are expected to absorb more and job roles are fuzzier. I remember I had a young lady come to me in my last company. I was her HR business partner. And she had expressed concern about how she was being asked to assume more responsibility. And she was asking me about that and was wanting to go to her manager to ask for more pay because she was taking on these additional responsibilities. And I told her, I said, look, I'm going to be honest with you. You can do what you want to, but I'm going to tell you the real deal. Look at the state of the company. We are laying off people. We're not making our numbers. Now is not the time to ask for additional money. Secondly, looking at what you've assumed, these responsibilities, I don't feel that it warrants a pay increase. Pay increases are warranted if your role has materially changed. You need to take a look at, have you assumed a lot more responsibility, and has your role changed in scope? If it hasn't, then, you probably shouldn't pursue a pay increase. But if it has, then it's worth pursuing a little bit more. But for her situation, considering the state of the business and considering that she was just taking on a few more things that she wasn't doing before, I told her that it was not in her best interest to go looking for a pay increase at that point, because managers and HR, I'm just going to tell you the truth. We don't like it when people feel like they deserve more pay for every little additional thing that they do. I'm just being honest with you. It doesn't look good, because if you look at your job description, most job descriptions have that statement on there for a reason, and additional responsibilities as assigned. So again, only if your role has materially changed and it has significantly changed in scope, they don't typically warrant a change in pay. So what we see in this environment, the forever layoff, is that employees are just told, hey, you got to be flexible. But the translation is, you got to do more with less. But none of it is your fault. It's a structural issue, but too many of us are taking it personally. We are thinking, hey, I'm being taken advantage of. I must not be good enough. I must need to work harder, or I really shouldn't take time off because it isn't a good time. No, 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 and no. This is a new environment, and you are reacting as any human under stress would. But here's where it gets really deep. Chronic insecurity about your job and your job security changes the way you see yourself. You don't fear just losing your job, but you even start questioning your worth. And it shows up in hesitation. It shows up in self-doubt. It shows up in playing small. You start avoiding risks. You start, you stop applying for bigger jobs because you feel like you're not ready, or, you don't deserve it. You don't negotiate offers because you feel like, hey, I'm just lucky to be able to get this. You start apologizing in meetings, and you start shrinking your presence. You are carrying the emotional residue into your job search, and unfortunately, it shows. So just hear me here. You're not struggling with your confidence because of who you are. You are struggling because of what you've been through and what a lot of us are still going through every single day. There's a big difference. Now, in part two, we are going to rebuild that. So today, it isn't about fixing anything. I just want you to understand what was going on and to share with you the name, because you can't change anything if you can't identify what it is and if you haven't acknowledged it. And you can't begin to heal what you're still blaming yourself for. So, in the next episode, we are going to talk strategy. We're going to talk about how to protect yourself, how to stay ready so you don't have to get ready, how to evaluate your risk, how to build a proactive plan so we can, go into 2026 solid, how to create your own personal career stability system, and how to reclaim your confidence. But for today, I want you to just breathe because we are going to be fine. And you're not crazy and you're not behind. And most importantly, know that you are not alone. This forever layoff is real. And so many people are being impacted by it, but it does not have to define our future. We can create stability in an unstable world. We can create confidence in a confusing system. And we can create options for ourselves when our companies are offering none. And so we're going to talk about all of that in the next episode. Now, if you want to go a lot deeper and really go into 2026 with a solid plan, I'm offering a free webinar this Thursday about play to win and how to have a solid 2026 job search blueprint. And it's for free. So if you're interested in joining me, I'm doing 2 episodes. I had to add an additional episode due to popular demand, but I'm doing 2 episodes, one at 11 a.m. and one at 7 p.m. If you're interested in joining me, then comment webinar below. I'll send you the details, or you can send me an email to info@exit2excel.com and put webinar in the subject line, and I'll send you the details there as well. But we're going to talk about all of this. Like I said, I have some exciting programs going on because 2026 is going to be our year. Your career does not have to be reactive anymore. You get to choose your path. Your clarity starts now, and you are going to take your power back. So I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for joining me.